But make sure you don't unbalance the building.
All your heavy bags
All
on
good to go. All right. Welcome everyone to Brisbane Azure User Group. Coming up, we have Dan, who's going to make a presentation. So this is being recorded. These microphones really pick up sound. So please talk up with your private conversations. It'll all go on YouTube. It's going to be great. Tonight, Brisbane Azure User Group, welcome to July. Yes. You're here for a different month. I apologise. This is all we got tonight. Before we get into the updates for the month, big thank you out there to our sponsors. So without these guys, this wouldn't be possible. So big thank you out there for Codify. So Codify for beer and maybe pizza, maybe not. We'll see. And Microsoft. So big thank you out there to these guys. They've really helped out. And being a community event, we really value participation, and we really want anybody to get involved. And you don't have to have a super polished presentation. If you've ever seen me present, it's definitely not. So we want to have anybody contribute. You know, what's your experience with Azure? Anything. You know, like what are the things you like, what are the things you don't like? It's all about giving back to the community. These sessions are recorded and go onto YouTube, and so we're slowly building a YouTube catalog. We've been a bit late on that YouTube social media stuff, so it's starting to get there, and there's some really cool sessions on that. It's starting to get a fair few, right? A couple of years now we've been doing it. Yeah. So I think we still have availability next month. So if anyone's keen, let us know. We can slot you in, not a problem. That's the email address down here. Flick us an email and let us know if you're keen to present. Yeah.
For the availability next month, do we have to go back in time?
Yes, well.
Oh, that's my bad. Yes, you do. Just for you, you do. I might have to mix that up. To be fair, I've done half the year like this, so I don't see why I have to change. He couldn't make it next month, so he's
Next month, are we on Exhibition Wednesday?
It may be.
It may be. It may be bumped like this month as well. Yeah.
State of Origin Exhibition is always.
Yeah. They need to cancel both of them. So yeah, welcome. And a few updates. There's been a few updates. Nothing earth-shattering, but a couple of interesting things. So Azure Data Explorer has dropped a persistent graph semantics. So if you're building any of this data, you can actually have shared data models that you can share amongst multiple people, teams. So performance, less processing. It's pretty cool. This is one that okay. Normally I don't do private preview, but for those of you that know me, I really like Azure Front Door, so I've just broken my rules for this one. There is now the ability to attach the WAF profile at a higher level and a lower level as well. So more ability to control the WAF rules that you provision. So things like, actually I think it's in this session as well. But there's been a whole bunch of changes coming through for Front Door. Things like wildcard certs, which never used to be there, and now these WAF profiles being able to provision it across multiple sites, as well as specific pages as well in your application. So it just gives you a little bit more control over how those WAF rules are run. For those of you that are interested in Databricks, so Databricks, amazing platform for things like ML and some of that deep data analysis. If you want to, generic, maybe go Fabric, but if you want that real data science aspect, Databricks. And so there's more connectivity coming across between Databricks and Fabric. And And this is an example of how the Power Platform can connect into that Databricks environment now and get near, it's not real time, it's near real time interaction into that Databricks platform. And it respects the security and the controls and all the things that are good in Azure. So simpler governance, etc. There's a new SKU of VMs that have come out. So the fours there, just more storage capacity, CPU performance, more throughput, and lower price. So just better, bigger, greater, etc., etc. We've got cross-tenant customer managed keys. So this is now for that scenario where maybe you're MSP, you're providing services out there, and you want to allow those clients to have their own keys and encrypt their own data and not have access to their data. This is now going to allow that.
Is that Chinese managed? I'll see. Actually, that's
Not only in China, but other places as well. So Azure SQL has got, Azure SQL managed instance. We've got a little bit more flexibility on the memory. It's coming to preview. So you can now sort of scale up that memory or less if you have a managed instance. And so you can see over there on the right hand side, we've got a bit of a table of the options, but all the way up there to 560 gigabytes, which I'm sure will be very cheap. Oh, sorry. And I probably should have put this one first, but so wildcard domains now a thing in front door. So for a long time, you couldn't do this in front door. You had to have every site with its own domains, still provisioned through Azure, but now you can actually provision a wildcard, and it makes that provisioning of those sub-sites far simpler in front door. Two-way forest trusts for Microsoft Entra Domain Services has gone GA. So this has been around for quite some time. I think I was using this 6 months ago, much more. So it's now gone GA. So for those of you that are using domain services, and there's some pretty novel ways you can actually use this. We ended up using domain services to allow to inject identities from one tenant into an on-premise domain of another organization. Trust words, security people.
Well,
It's so picky on that security, Ray. But yes, you're correct. Trust, and it sort of spins up those external organization identities in a specific part of Active Directory. It's not bundled in with all your core identities. So yeah, like that's a pretty cool scenario, and obviously it's a bit of a novel scenario, but all the standard sort of scenarios around domain services apply as well. So app service, bit of an update on Stack Hub. So for those of you who are using Azure on-prem, some updates to your capabilities. That's pretty much it. So fairly light on, considering what we had last month.
The pizzas are on.
Oh, nice.
I need to somebody with the key. Barney here? Yeah, sorry.
For all of you online,
More people to carry for you there?
I think if Barney comes with me, it'll be all right. Thank you.
for everyone online in YouTube, if you come in person, you can get pizza
And beer.
and beer and pizza. So come along. We need more people. Awesome. So just a few resources. We have Slack, we have YouTube. There's some training information and some blog recommendations. I probably shouldn't have gone so fast because Dan has just stepped out.
Oh, it's more about Slack.
Can you talk a little bit about the AI seminar that's been running today? Do you know about
I
that?
do not know about the AI.
Okay.
What was it?
By Dave,
Down the precinct.
AGA Dave was,
I can talk about AI. I've recently built MCP.
Microsoft Certified Professional.
Yeah, I've built that. So no, but I recently built an MCP server and connected it into a local OLAM, so I can actually talk about that. It's sort of AI. Yeah.
I was also going to say, sorry, I've just been noticing out of the corner of my eye, you might want to shift the camera a little bit to the right because it's only, it's probably catching most of you, but yeah, it's probably
It's
not.
probably using the presenter.
Nobody wants to see me.
Yeah, I remember when you said,
Don't worry about that. Nobody wants to see me.
The anonymous
Yeah.
presenter.
yeah, I remember when you set it up, it's probably not catching you when you're presenting over
When
here.
I'm walking over there.
Here on this half of the room, you set it up.
It feels all really awkward because everyone's run over there.
Yeah.
So I'm.
Presents from there.
Don't worry, Daniel sit down. He's fine.
So he'll be included, just
He'll
not.
be included, just not me. Yeah, so I am going to put it back to some dancing bear music.
Sorry, can you go back to the list of all the previous
Yeah.
presentations? And it was just a thought. Could there be even an evening during the year, which is a summary of the
All
best,
the stuff.
the best of the last 6 months or 12 months?
So yes, and absolutely, and we'd love somebody to stand up and present that summary, and that would happen in December. So December is normally our unconvention night, and we hope to have a whole bunch of volunteers to sort of like step up and go, I'd like to present this little 5-minute piece. I want to talk about. It doesn't even have to be present, right? It could be, hey, I'm using product X and I'm looking to see how other people use this. Like, for example, I'm using, no, that'd be really mean, App Gateway, and I'm wondering the value of using that rather than Front Door. Sorry, I have been to App Gateway, don't worry.
Supposed to API match, so.
Apem's fine, but I got that right. Yeah, I think I got that right. Yeah, App Gateway is the product that you can put inside your region. It's not globally visible, and I don't get as much cool, funky features as Front Door, and it still costs me a ton of cash. So I don't get it. I just go Front Door every day. Does anyone use App Gateway? Oh, he's going to stone me.
I'm pretty excited about that wildcard cert thing with Front Door.
Makes it easier. Like Front Door is such an easy product.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that.
It's going to make things great. Yeah. No. So what sort of products are people using? App service? Nobody. Everyone hates app service.
App service.
Bit of app service. Container apps?
Yep.
App service and container apps. Kubernetes? No trifecta there.
People level.
AKS or spin your own up on VMs? AKS or
No, actually, we're using
build your own
them.
on-prem?
I guess we are.
Extend Azure.
Yeah, trying to.
Yeah. I mean, hats off to you. Like, Kubernetes is a tough gig. and like Rancher or.
Actually, I'm more of I come from the open source area
Okay.
in data engineering, trying to get familiar with this.
Yeah, my totally biased advice, and this is totally biased. Give up on AKS. Just go to container apps because it does all the hard work for you, and it's still AKS under the covers. So you can still claim it's sort of AKS, but like totally biased. Like I say, it's like so AKS is great, but there's so much configuration. Sorry, Kubernetes is
What
even,
is container?
even greater, and there's even more configuration options, and it's just like, do you really need it?
What is container? What do they do? This
So container apps,
by
yeah. So container apps is like they've got AKS and they've put another layer on top of it,
Okay.
and you can do serverless, and so well, yeah, but so rather than so if you're going on VMs, you're spinning up the VMs and installing it, and you're running all these VMs. Whereas if you go AKS, it's a bit easier. If you go container apps, there's some constraints, so they force Dapper on you, so you don't get to choose that. There's a few other things that they sort of go. No, this is it's a very opinionated platform, but because it's opinionated, it's all done for you. And so this one was really cool, like really cheap. Yeah, it's a really good product. Still appropriate. You know, you still have to have the use case. If your use case is, I'm building a website, maybe not. You know, yeah, still need a use case. But it's a simpler. I don't know. You don't have to hurt yourself as hard. Yeah.
Helm is painful.
Helm is painful. Helm is really painful. But if you want something like, I'm totally wrong here, so don't take this as advice. If you want something that's super easy, all right, we might take a 5-minute pause. Everyone run out, grab some pizza, and then we're going to come back for the main event.
So,
Trying to.
it's trying to, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's
bang
always
it on.
a game, isn't it?
I'm trying to get help. Okay, learning that.
Okay, I haven't even delved.
Thank you, Dan, for organizing all of this.
Oh, didn't do a very good job this time.
No, mate.
For those who. For those who are online, if you can hear me, the pizzas have arrived, so we're gonna take about a 10-minute break and come back. I really apologize for that. Things did not go quite as planned tonight.
A lot of people have to bet on protection. Yeah, so you do, yeah. What's your yeah, get money, so I Number two out of two. Yeah. I think it's around like 60. I'm not too sure, but they're just coming in like sell information. They kind of wire of equaling one. Whereas like the single sell the creamy liquids instead. So that like error, but you could have yeah, now my running thing for that line. It's a bit of things. So a lot of accuracy. And I remember exactly like
Those online will start in a couple of minutes.
yeah, we didn't know, right? Because you only got to do that.
Okay, we might kick off now. So now that you've heard the main event with Damien, now you get the minor event here. Put this together. So first of all, deep apologies for all the disruptions tonight and things not going quite to schedule. It was a comedy of errors, really. Because the trains are not running properly between the Gold Coast and Brisbane, I decided to drive tonight. And the car park that I booked, that I pre-booked, apparently you needed to have a magic spell to be able to reveal the entrance to where it was. It's not marked. And my wand broke yesterday, so I didn't have the ability to find it. So I wound up doing about 3 circuits around Brisbane. I don't know if you've ever driven around this part of Brisbane before at this time of night, but it's like stopping go.
Just don't drive.
Every circuit's about 20 minutes. So there we go. Anyway, and then with the pizzas, the pizzas actually arrived half an hour early. And of course, nobody was here to receive them. And they're trying, it was by Uber, so they're trying to text me and driving. I can't text them anyway. But I'm glad you got that anyway at the end of the day.
Thank you.
So this presentation, as you can tell by the title, is called Modernizing the Digital Integration Hub. So I'll talk, if you don't know what a digital integration hub is, I promise you will by the end of this presentation, and we're going to talk about how we're modernizing. And how many people are here for the first time, this group? Oh, so there's a few. Okay. So there are probably a few people who don't know who I am. And if not, you probably wish you didn't. But I'm an integration specialist. I work at Deloitte for that. And I mentioned integration, so I'm not a data specialist. I'm not an AI specialist. But both of those things play very heavily into tonight's presentation. But integration, of course, it's the focus, my focus anyway, particular part of it. So putting this together was actually a learning curve for me too. And I hope that everyone here can learn something the way I did. There's a lot of boring details on that slide. I'm not going to talk to it, except I will talk about the picture because that's probably hopefully more interesting. So that picture is represents 2 of my passions in life. One is my music, and the other is my Catholic faith. So this is just before I'm about to play piano at the Easter Vigil service at my local church. And it's a good arrangement because not only do I get to give back to God a little bit, from the talent that He's given me, but church is a great place to play because the people are nice enough there to put up with my really amateur playing skills. So there we go.
Dan, the handle is for Twitter X or the Daniel too?
Yes, that's the Twitter or handle. Yes, that's right. Okay. So maybe about 6 years ago or so, if you follow Gartner at all in their articles, you might have seen this article. And basically, this was Gartner's introduction to the concept of a digital integration hub. I'm not sure if they coined that term or if they were just the first to kind of like promote it. But in any case, it's not new, right? The concept has been out for 6 years or so. That's why my presentation is called Modernizing it. Because between the time that this came out and now, there have been some evolutions in terms of data platforms and how things are managed. So that's what I'm going to kind of focus on in this presentation. And then also, along with introducing the digital integration hub and the concept of the parts that make it up, like APIs, data, and integration, I'm going to talk a little bit deeper about some of the data platform concepts, some of the new architectures or constructs that weren't in place maybe at the time that Gartner first published that article. I'll talk about what it is. I'll talk about how you would build it in Microsoft Lab. So, and then I'll wrap up with a couple of case studies on that. Now, this is a conceptual, rather than theoretical presentation only, so there's no demos. So, given how the rest of the evening has gone, there's nothing. There are no demos, and nothing's going to fall apart or anything or go unplanned. So I'm sorry that you're here for the excitement of seeing something fail spectacular. You'll probably be a little bit disappointed in that. So everything should go smoothly from here on. That.
Right slide.
Yeah, just kidding. I didn't want to. All right. So the great thing about working for a company like Deloitte is that there's a lot of smart people around. And as I said, integration is my focus, not so much data or AI. So that's why I had help from some of my colleagues there who are really good and contribute to this presentation. And unfortunately, they couldn't be here tonight because it would have been nice to actually have them kind of supplement the presentation. Okay, so we're going to start with the first main component, which effectively was, and from Gartner's perspective, was the driver for a digital integration hub, and that was the APIs. The title of the article is Turbocharge Your APIs, Digital Integration Hub. We all know here how important APIs. I mean, they basically make the digital world go around and make everything work. Right? And you know, just this quote from Gartner is still, you know, very, very relevant, even though it's like 8 years old. I would like to think that if they were to issue this quote again today, they would add 2 words to it, which is this, because AI absolutely depends on APIs as well, and nothing would work on it. And just briefly covering what are the benefits of the APIs? Well, the first thing is they enable integration a lot better because you can talk to basically any platform and you don't have to worry about navigating necessarily each system's peculiarities. If they can expose an API, that's a contract way to interact with systems. They're also, because it's fairly modular, it means it's very scalable and expandable because you can enhance one API without necessarily affecting the other ones that are involved. And of course, that helps developers too, as a modular design, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can create something and then reuse it constantly. Oh no, this is all pretty obvious stuff. So it also gives you a layer of security in front of your applications and systems. So you don't have to go all the way directly to the system to get that authentication or authorization working. You can do it at the API level and protect the systems at the same time without actually draining them to have to deal with those kind of authorization controls. And of course, with APIs, you have support for diverse platforms. You're able to talk to anything, you know, from mobile to systems to all different operating systems, because you put an API in front of it that allows you to traverse those different platforms very easily. And one of the ones we really don't think about too much is the innovation capability, because by exposing things in APIs and different applications, you can piece together different systems and applications to create things that wouldn't exist otherwise. So APIs are really, really good. Okay, now on to the biggest part of the digital integration. Yes.
APIs. Are people getting revenue from APIs that are valuable and they're creating? Or was that an idea that was nice 12, 18 months ago?
Well, it depends on what you do with those APIs and how you expose them. For example, if you use an API gateway, right? A lot of API gateway platforms, certainly APIM, allows you the ability to track and control how people use that and monetize it. So you can basically create different tier levels and charge people for using it. So there's certainly the opportunity to that.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've paid for a few API keys in my day, and the ability to use an API in certain ways and certain levels of that API, like just, yeah, it's.
As a customer, they're great because you have modular billing that's made by a discrete person that's asked for a service, and it's a computerized call, so you can say exactly who it's from, exactly when it happened, and allocate that billing to, say, a cost center, rather than engaging in a lengthy contract for emailing someone and asking them to provide a file. You usually have super governed, program-driven interactions.
Yes, and of course, if you're a reasonable organization, you're going to have an API gateway in place that takes care of, that does all that stuff for you. Thank you. So moving on to data. So data is critically important. It is probably, you know, if you think about it for an organization, it is most valuable asset of that organization. As human beings, we'd like to think employees are the most valuable asset, but I think we know that that's probably not so much the case. We're far more replaceable than the data is. So it's really important that not only that you protect that data, but also that you capitalize on it by using proper data strategies with it. So this is, yeah, I like your comment too, another old one, but it's a good one. And I'll warn you, there's going to be a lot of Gartner quotes in this presentation. So this is one from a few years ago, a prediction that Gartner made. And have a read of that because I'm going to ask you a very simple question. How many of you think that turned out to be true? Show of hands. Wow, almost no one. Really? Wow. Okay, so Gartner is not much of a fortune teller, I think. Okay, well, that's interesting. So I actually ChatGPT that question, and it turns out, according to ChatGPT, that actually it was true. It did come true, but one of the things it pointed out was the fact that the data platforms have evolved quite a bit since that time. So there's a bit of changes in how things work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these three kind of architectures, I guess you would call them, data architectures or data platforms types, because, and I know that there are more, but these are the three that were pretty much at the height when Gartner first came out with that article. So I'll explain those first before we get on to the more modern ones. So to start with the data hub. So unlike what you might think, a data hub is not principally about storage or long-term storage of data. It's actually about movement of data. It's about being able to tie together the producers and the consumers and allowing that data to flow between systems and providing all of the governance and everything that goes around that, controlling. So there may be some storage involved, but that's not its principal functionality. Its principal functionality is basically to enable data to move and to have the controls around it. That sounds a bit like integration, doesn't it? Yeah. And actually, data hubs are often part of an integration platform or part of the responsibility. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. The other two, the data warehouse and the data lake, are different in the fact that they are actual repositories of data. And that's one of their principal things, is the storage and the creating the accessibility of that data for digestion. So now they do it differently, though. So when we talk about a data warehouse, the data warehouse is what I think we would call like a schema structure, where the data is very, very well, it's very well known, like well structured, and to actually store the data, it has to conform to that structure, which is really good because it makes it really fast to retrieve that data, and it's very, very organized, and it satisfies use cases like business intelligence, for example. They're usually very high performant too, because it's very easy to get that data out. Everything is indexed right and everything. Data lakes are different. Its whole emphasis is on getting the data in, no matter where it's coming from and no matter what condition it's in. It wants to collect massive amounts of data, and then after that, worry about formatting it and getting it together in a way that's. So you might say schema last, that you worry about the refinement of data when you're taking it out, when you're consuming it, not when you're putting it in. And that's really good for situations like where you're processing data that comes from multiple places, right? Aggregating it, and then and also for AI type of solutions where you just need a lot of different data, like you're going to train models and things like that from a lot of varied sources. So those are two very different use cases, right? So if you're a large organization, how do you decide which one to choose? Well, the answer probably in most cases that you choose all of it, right? Because it all kind of works together. And this kind of ties in with a more modern data construct we call a data lake house. And as you can kind of gather by the name, the data lake house is kind of a hybrid architecture that basically combines the best of a data warehouse with a data lake. So it's still able to support ingestion of massive amounts of data from varied sources, but it also supports schemas, both in and reading and writing schemas. It's performant. It gives you basically a balance between those things because you're basically combining the aspects of both of them. And most organizations now are kind of moving toward this kind of structure. And if you want to know what I mean by examples of that, there's a few here. So Databricks would be one, Snowflake would be another, Apache Hudi would be. How many here have Databricks in their organization are using it? Oh, a few. Okay, good. And Snowflake, anyone? Couple? Anybody Apache? Okay, that one probably less familiar with. So I'm not going to talk in detail about how they work, but as you can imagine, is a component in both of them for that represents the data warehouse and the data lake, and the data hub, which is actually facilitating all of the flow of that data in and out of it. So it combines everything, and it's a little bit subtle, but if you can see that little arrow there between, it's basically hinting at the fact that ingesting all that data into the data lake, raw data, and then from there you kind of process that data to fit it into the data warehouse so that it, where it becomes very highly structured on that. And one of the ways we do that is through something called the medallion lake architecture. And this is what all data lake houses would basically build upon. So there's 3 different tier levels in this. You have bronze, silver, and gold. So the bronze layer is all about just the ingestion of that data, taking it in its raw format. It would have minimal validation, if any, on the data. So your data types would be something very generic like strings and binaries and variants, right? You're not going to do a lot of validation of that data. You just collect it at that point, and it's in very, very raw format. The next level of silver is where you start doing your first level of processing on that. So now you start validating your data, you start cleaning it, you get rid of null values, data types that don't conform and things like that. And you also can start building your models to serve your APIs, which means doing aggregations and things like that, that that your APIs are going to need to consume. So for example, in this case, I can blow this up a little bit. Yeah, make it a little bit bigger. So for example, in this case, you get customers and transactions in this raw data. When it gets into the silver level, you can actually start to combine that into a view that ties those things together, because that's more likely how your API is going to want to consume it, right? And the same thing with the accounts and opportunities. Then you have the gold layer, and the gold layer is really more about the data warehouse kind of thing, the kind of reporting stuff that you do, which has very, very specific sort of aggregations and views in the way that the data gets sliced to serve that. Does that make sense? Everything? Cool. Okay.
So, sorry, real quick one. Buyer beware. You've got to, if you're building a model, you've got to really understand what filtering has happened across different layers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit later about some challenges. Okay. That's that. You definitely have to really understand your data. Okay. So that covers APIs and that covers data. So now we get to my favorite bit, which is integration. And I love comparing integration to plumbing. Because really that's what it is. Just as plumbing makes the fluids flow through your building, then integration is what makes data flow through your organization and your whole architecture. And like plumbing, integration's hidden, right? So your plumbing's hidden in the walls. You don't see it. You don't think about it. You're not aware of it unless it breaks. Then you're aware of it. Big time. Same thing about integration. It's so important and it's so difficult to sell to people because they don't see it. Right? There's no sexy interface for it that they can see. So before we talked about the data hub and that it looked like an integration scenario, and it is actually, that is a big part of the data hub's responsibility is integration, but a true integration platform does more than just data hub. Generally, there's additional responsibilities in that. For example, in addition to doing commands and queries and publish and subscribe, which is kind of data hub type of stuff, it also has to handle events. It has to handle things like API management, of course, typically part of your integration platform, transformation of messages as they go through, orchestration of processes. So the integration platform really does quite a lot. Another Gartner quote, sorry. The thing I want to highlight here is that Gartner is pointing out how important it is that both your application integration and your data integration kind of works together. Those things have to, kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? You wouldn't really have it any other way. But it tends that people sometimes get a bit siloed about that. So it's pretty important to think about that from a holistic way. And then I'll couple that with a quote from one of our Deloitte people, Alec, here, who mentions the fact that he sees that our integration teams are working more together with our data teams. And I can tell you from my experience in Deloitte that that's absolutely true. On all the projects that I've been involved in lately, the big ones that involve data team, and the integration team, and we're very, very closely knit how we have to, because it makes sense. The integration is only important if you've got data to flow, and the data flowing is only valuable if you got it integrating and flowing, right? So it's got, makes absolute sense. Okay. So we've talked about APIs, we've talked about data, we've talked about integration. And as you can gather, those things kind of need to fit together. Now, I specifically drawn this with these sprockets or these gears, right, to kind of illustrate a concept here. As you can imagine, the integration you typically is used to decouple your APIs directly from your data, right? But the truth is that in this structure, if you move any one of these gears, it's going to spin the others, both of the others. Even though the APIs are not directly connected, they are indirectly connected through the integration. So the point I'm trying to get across with that here is that the APIs are still, in a sense, coupled to the data, and that when you make requests through the APIs, and that's going to your backend system, that's a resource taxation on your backend system, right? And that backend system has to actually be available, right? So there's a dependency on that. And moreover, too, there's a little bit of sometimes complexity involved if you've got multiple backend systems and it's got to aggregate that data. Let me explain that better with this diagram. When Gartner first published its article, this was the first diagram in the article where it talks about this is your typical sort of scenario, integration architecture and organization. How many people here would have an architecture like this? Good. Yeah, it's not bad, by the way. Certainly, it could be perfectly suitable for your use cases. But the thing I want to point out here is that Gartner labels this as a request-based integration layer. And what that means is that the primary responsibility of the integration platform here is to field the requests from the APIs and direct them to the backend system and connect those things that way, right? And then if you notice also, I didn't circle it, but it says macro services. The macro services are supporting the APIs. That's not a typo. What Gartner's point here is that those APIs are typically going to want to draw data from multiple places, and they need to do that aggregation and transformation and everything to take that data from proprietary formats and put it into something that's usable in your APIs. So there's a bit of heavy lifting in that in those services. So what do we do about that? So how do we get this to decouple a little bit better so that there isn't that direct dependency, right? So I've probably done this badly, but my point here to try to get across is you all know how a transmission works, right? Your car, like your engine isn't always turning at the same speed as your car wanting to go. So you have the different measured gears, right, which changes ratio. What I'm trying to show here is that the digital integration hub, when you introduce it, its purpose is to kind of help decouple those APIs a little bit better so that there isn't quite as strong a dependency. And with Gartner's description of what it is here, I stress the words low latency, high performance. That is the ultimate driver of a digital integration hub, is to increase the performance of your APIs. Okay, so how does it do that? So this is the architecture we started with when we moved into a digital integration hub. So you see that we add a whole new layer called the high performance data store, right? So what that is made up of some structure that is able to take data from your backend systems, pull it together, aggregate it, process it, do what it needs to do. So it's already prepared to be consumed by the APIs. And you can imagine data structures we just talked about, data warehouse, right, data lake, things like that. That would be kind of what would make up that particular part. Let's look at it in detail. So its primary purpose here is to basically consolidate and aggregate the data and do any kind of transforming that's required. So it's not in the proprietary format that from your systems, but actually in the format that's consumable by your APIs. It basically also entails the use of something called metadata management system, which is basically how to make your data discoverable and cataloged so that you can find it easily. There would be very high performance search capabilities that would be involved in that. And although the analytics is technically part of the high-performance data store itself, it's generally a driver for it because the analytics can now source all its information from this data store instead of having to go directly to the backend systems and tax those systems. And as we talked about, potential components, definitely data warehouse, data lake house, hopefully, if you want, maybe an MDM if that's needed. But those are the kind of structures that would live in this layer. And now when we look at the integration layer, notice now instead of a request-based integration layer, it's now called an event-based integration layer because its primary function is now shifted rather than handling requests from the APIs. Instead, it's actually siphoning data off those backend systems and actually pumping that data into the high-performance data store and keeping that synchronized so that you always have that current data in that system. And that can work through different various mechanisms that, integration patterns, either by messaging, by change data capture, ESB or stream processing. It kind of depends on your particular situation. A large organization will generally have several of those patterns operating in their integration platform. And then in the API level, there's not much difference there. You still have your API and your API gateway, but now the macro services are now called microservices or mini services, or we might even say nano services, because they no longer have to do all the heavy lifting. The data in the high performance data store is already in a format that's very readily accessible for them and presentable. So it can be very, very quick and responsive. And remember, that was one of our key drivers for the Digital Integration Hub, was to improve the performance of your APIs and isolate that stuff completely from your backend systems so that so that those systems of records can concentrate on their primary and fundamental functions, right, at best capacity without having to constantly answer requests from APIs, which typically are often very low value to the company. Yes.
So let's go back to that. So I'm just trying to get my head around. So you've got the microservices as a part of the front end service. So they would connect to the digital integration hub, or is it like part of the integration hub?
No, they're separate. They would talk to the digital.
Okay, so they're external, so they're like application.
Yeah, I mean it's a digital integration hub architecture, but the hub part is actually that center. Well, it's a high performance data store and the integration platform. I think together is probably what we would consider the digital integration hub.
Okay, possibly just an example. Microsoft Fabric does also have those. Oh, sorry. Keep going. I won't spoil your thunder. Keep going.
We'll get to that. Yeah, does that answer your question? So the reason is when we say APIs, the API will have the contract and the interface, but there's obviously something that's actually doing the work.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where that demarcation was.
No, that's a good point because it's not very clearly marked in the diagram. So that's
basically can be depends on the product.
Yes. Here we go.
Yeah, because I guess you got to ultimately because you got to have the application your business logic running somewhere, and that's something like Spark. You probably might even want to run it there.
Yeah,
it's just like a.
Depends how you design.
All right. So moving on. You've probably heard the term data integration hub and now digital integration hub, and you might be tempted, like I was, to think that it's probably just two different names for the same thing. Apparently not exactly. The digital integration hub is really more of a type of data integration hub. And the reason for that simply is that the digital integration hub is really primarily about supporting those transactional things and getting real-time information and as performant as possible. Whereas the data integration hub would potentially do that, but also do other functions as well, some more broader things like handling batch processing and stuff as well. So really, digital integration hub is just type or one part of the data integration hub. Okay, so what are the benefits? We've already talked about.
Can you go back to that one?
Yep.
Previous one.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that's just hit me between the eyes is that the digital integration is about real time.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who's doing real time modeling or focus on on operational things. That's the primary one. They don't care about the other people that are management, higher level, outside of the real-time loop. Yeah. Okay. Love it. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. So we've already talked a lot about the benefits, but basically what we want, the key driver for this is more performant APIs, right? So we get a more responsive user experience. And we can do that without taxing our systems of record, right? So we don't interfere with the primary functionality of those systems. And we have effectively 24-hour support for your APIs too, because even if you're going to take your backend systems offline for maintenance or batch processing or whatever it is that they might have to do, with that information being in the high performance data store, the APIs can feed on that at that time. So you have that sort of separation of concern there. And of course, the high performance data store is great for being able to feed your analytical, and with AI being so big right now and everything, it's so important to be able to access all of that information readily. But it does come with challenges, right? So first of all, it's not a trivial thing to roll out. You can see that architecture is fairly involved, right? So that's something you have to think about. You know, whether you can manage to do that or not. The other thing is that you really, somebody said it before, you really have to understand your data, because you want to be able to build canonical data models. And I'll tell you, I've been in organizations where that's been attempted, and it's really hard. They struggle with it. They really do. They get so fixed on the way that their systems represent their data that it's hard to break away from that. But that's where you're really going to get most of your value from, right? And then the integration aspect of being able to support that bi-directional synchronization, especially, you know, if you have to not only retrieve data from the system, but also keep it updated in real time. That can be tricky to do that. And event-based, I love event-based integration. I mean, we love doing that because it serves real-time purposes and it makes it so extendable, but it's hard. It can be hard to do it. And then the other thing is that the metadata management, having all that data together is no good if you can't discover it really well. So you need to have mechanisms in place to make that catalog so well that you can consume it. And then, and of course, you know, the whole designing and building of that system would probably, in most organizations, require skills that the organizations don't have in-house for doing it. So something to think about. So how would you mitigate these challenges? Well, the first one is, it seems obvious, is determine if your organization actually needs a digital integration hub. You know, it may be like some of you put your hands up at that first architecture. That might suffice. You know, if your API demands are not that heavy or not that demanding, and or it's easy, or the data is not that complex, it's probably no reason to go through all of that, right? The canonical data model, again, there's no way around that other than really knowing what your data is and what your data requirements are and how it needs to be consumed, right? That's the important thing. Bidirectional, understanding the integration patterns. There are a number of integration patterns that we can use, but you have to kind of, again, understand how you're going to, how it's going to be consumed to use the right patterns for the job. And generally, there'll be several. It won't just be one, or it might be several. There are metadata solutions out there, and a lot of the platforms that you would get now, especially data lakehouse platforms, are going to have that capability built into it already. So you can kind of address that feature that way, most of them. And depending on well, when we talked about Azure, I'll talk a little bit about some of the services that might help with that. And then if you don't have the skills in-house, then you might have to consider engaging a partner to help you build that. Some partner that has the depth and breadth of experience being able to build integration and data structures. I might say something like a Deloitte might be a good example. Somebody like who could do that. Okay, that's the theoretical part before I start going into how we do it in Microsoft. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have one, probably very simple. On one of the slides before, number 43, we're talking about canonical. Is that referring to the company name that creates Ubuntu, or not related to it?
Which one?
If you go to, so that one. So saying the second one, designing a canonical data model.
Yes.
It's nothing related to the open source company that creates the Linux distribution.
No, it's about taking, you know, a lot of the data that's stored is very proprietary format in the systems. Now how breaking it down to think about business domains, like domain-based design, domain-driven design, a big thing company. Alex, a big champion of that at Deloitte. So that it's from a functional or business perspective. Yeah, that's
Your business
Thank you.
information model, so like
Yeah.
a customer does X and customer has these fields and
Mhm.
all your relation schemas, your counting rules, your semantic links between them all.
Thank you.
I think like for something to bring out from ancient history. Sorry, I remember you doing a presentation some years back at Deloitte.
This one.
On the floor, which was same as the kitchen, window, seats facing south.
Yeah.
You did a presentation on setting up a graph API. Remember?
Graph
Maybe
API.
someone from Deloitte did, but you are there. The bit that's got me that I'm always amazed at the magic is the security. So in that diagram you had with the bottom data layers, yeah, you've got Freddie can get to systems A, B, and C, but can't get to D. But the chemical model, the data models have aggregated fields from and so on. So how is the RBAC curated for these solutions? Is it the case that the whole bottom layer magically, sorry, not magically, is just forgotten about, and you have to re-tattoo the RBAC model on who can see what? So, you know, Snowflake and so on have a number of elaborations on that. Or is it potentially at the metadata where you can take advantage of the metadata and that can give you some smarts? Traditional sort of like thinking of Power BI, row level security or column level security to be brought into that analysis. Where does that come into play?
So first of all, I'll just say that generically what you're describing is to me sounds like a function of a data hub, right? This is part of that governance about what we can see. What and in terms of where we go in that platform, I would go in the high performance data store, I think, and it would be part of the metadata management. And in terms of specifically when we're going to talk now about Microsoft, I think probably Microsoft Purview is probably I think it's probably the product.
Yeah, because I was just thinking proprietary systems have their own security, and there's potentially an RBAC or access control that's spoke to that for parts of the organization, but then you're re-exposing that information aggregated with other elements, and there may be some undesirable presentation of that because of the native system and that bridge between what the security controls around the native system of who can see what being in alignment with what gets presented in the aggregation. That's my concern.
But might actually have
I can answer that question.
Oh, good.
So, it like from a idealistic perspective, your data integration hub would read and refer to the custom bespoke system and understand and reflect and in most cases mirror that. So not leverage, but mirror that security model. In practical real world examples, most ways that that's done is it's redeveloped in the hub, but ideally components in the hub align one-to-one with source systems. So the data owner of said system would be responsible for the authorization and permissions, and then that would flow up to the aggregations and get exposed that way. And so it depends as to how much effort you want to put into creating that area.
I appreciate the mechanical model and the difficulty where you said companies don't get it because your various your information domains and your data, what you call the entities that come from that often are aggregated across, and that's always a headache. So as I said, I didn't see security back in any of those things, so I knew it was underlying somewhere in all those bits and the complexity and maybe metadata.
So not necessarily a silver bullet, but the Microsoft products, and I don't want to steal any of your thunder. So the Microsoft product that he's going to talk about does flow those through the capabilities to a greater extent than you would imagine.
You're defining rules for these policies that apply to both systems rather than building a policy and then trying to replicate the policy. If you can define it off the metadata as a rule, and then will then apply to both in tandem.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was the hint was being the meddle. That's what I seem to be. I've never achieved that in the real world. So I mean,
The real world, it's a lot harder, and
yeah, that's what I mean.
and a lot of people sort of go for 2 points of control rather than because realistically, in the integrations, they lose control anyway, and they don't have 2 points of control. They have 1 point of control, and then no control. So at least you've got the ability to have a point of control that natively flows throughout your systems. But the reality is, a lot of the legacy products, they're probably old. They're probably a little bit difficult to work with. None of that stuff sort of just comes free.
Okay.
So you don't remember doing the draft presentation? Maybe I'm being too
I don't
old.
think it was me.
I remember all the.
But I did a version of this, an earlier version of this that you were at. Like usually, you always ask the hard questions.
Oh, yeah. I'm fire. Session on fire. Well, who's that? Who's there?
Okay, so if you were going to want to build this in Azure, okay, what would you do? So if we kind of build the layers as we, that we saw on the Gartner diagram, and we start thinking about how would we populate these layers using the wealth of tools that we have available to us in Azure. Well, let's start from the top. The API gateway, that should be pretty easy. I mean, there really is only one choice for that, right? API management. And that, definitely like to what you were saying before, about monetization and about getting value, that API management does that extremely well, because it organizes your APIs into products, which you then have a key, a subscription key for, and then you can have tier levels, all those kind of things. So API management, that's easy. For microservices, what are you going to build behind those APIs to actually make them function? You've got a wealth of options there. So web apps is a pretty obvious one. You can build that using app service plans. You can also do function apps, which also live in app service plans. They work really well, and they have some built-in integration capabilities as well. If you want real either more sophisticated workflows, or if you need to use any one of the thousands of connectors that come with logic apps, that's also a solution for being able to build the guts behind your APIs. And if you really like working with containers, you've got options there as well. You've got very scalable but fairly simple built container constructs with container apps, which includes a sidecar model with Dapper. But if you really want full-blown orchestration of Kubernetes and all that, you can do AKS if you want to implement them. And then this last one, maybe not very fashionable these days, Service Fabric. It's a bit old now, but it was originally designed to host microservices. That's what it was designed to do. And Microsoft still uses this. I'm pretty sure this is the engine behind some of the products, like maybe even Service Bus, I think.
Still the best product.
Yeah, you still like it. So some people still like it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Sorry.
Hang on.
Why? Why is it still one of the best?
It is such a dream to use. It's so simple. It's so secure by default. It's like you're using AKS, but zero headache. It's
Just reliable. It's it just works.
So, and furthermore, and like, yes, a lot of the container apps can do this nowadays, but when it was released, it had a native persistence, so you didn't necessarily need to use a database. You could create persistent lists in your code, and it would automatically distribute that across 10 nodes under the covers, and you don't need to worry about it. You've just got these effectively in-memory objects. You don't need to worry about your persistence layer. It was a really good product. I'm disappointed that Kubernetes took off.
Hmm.
But to be fair, Kubernetes is open source. Service Fabric was Microsoft, so it had a reputational challenge. But if you then look at things like, who's the biggest contributor to Kubernetes? Well, it's like the Service Fabric team. It's one of the biggest contributors. So they're sort of they much to my dismay, they realise that the future is probably Kubernetes, and they're contributing to both. But it's still easier.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we move to the high performance data store, well, first you've got to have a place to actually store your data. And Azure has all kinds of database structures that you can use. So if you want relational data, you've got SQL DB. NoSQL data is Cosmos DB. You've got PostgreSQL, Marion database, and a few others, a whole bunch that I'm not putting on the slide because there's too many of them, but there are definitely plenty of different data stores. But of course, if you're talking about, enterprise level kind of structures for being able to do a high performance data store, you probably want something like a data warehouse or a data lake, and Azure has both of those to you. And we talked about the metadata management for that, and Purview has that capability. It has the catalog capability and the governance as well, controlling who can see what. I think that's where a lot of that functionality comes in. Who can see what. And also we have fantastic search capability with AI search, which if you're doing AI stuff, especially there's a lot of stuff. There's vector databases now, which AI search does extremely well. So plenty of capability in there. From the analytics side, you have Synapse Analytics, which, by the way, is also a data warehouse. So if you it kind of crosses over a little bit, if you're going to use Synapse Analytics, you probably have that for your data warehouse. And Databricks, of course, which is also, by the way, a data lake house. So if you're using that, that's probably suffices for both of those things. And we also have Data Explorer to use. And if you want an AI and you're doing training models and stuff, we've got machine language, Azure Machine Language as well. And there's probably more in there than what I'm just putting up. These are the ones I could fit on the slide.
One quick question, and my question's around what is actually really inherently good for time series data. You can't build models off things where the time series actually isn't preserved. Is that obvious to you? Which ones of these, like mostly SQL, Postgres doesn't preserve time series for really building models? Not time series models, sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, in a subset.
So within Cosmos DB, there's basically a data model in there called Cassandra, and that's a time series database.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Thank you. Sorry.
There we go. All right. And then the integration layer, we have lots of options in there as well. So if you're doing event-based management, you got event hubs, which is good for really big data telemetry type things, and feeding that into streaming stuff. Or you have Event Grid, which is more reactive kind of stuff, to notifications. Service Bus for very, very advanced and robust messaging. We've got Stream Analytics to do streaming data as well, which probably would vector into time series as well, I'd imagine, depending how you're ingesting that data. And you've also got Logic Apps, which again has over 1,000, I think like 1,500 connectors right now that are built into that, plus the ability to do persistent workflows if you need that. Function apps, again, you can write anything in code with function apps, and there's a lot of integration capabilities in that in terms of the bindings that you have. Not as extensive as the 1,500 connectors in Logic Apps, but you do have quite a few in there. And then for ETL type stuff, where you're moving large bits of data and doing transformation, ETL stuff, then that would be Data Factory as well. So yeah, plenty of services. So if you want to go down the PaaS way and build your own digital integration hub, you've got an amazing toolkit there to work with. But where do you start? So
what I tried to look for a landing zone for that digital integration hub. There's no specific one for a landing zone for that. But what there is there's an accelerator, which is basically just a bunch of collection of templates. So it's kind of like a mini landing zone. And if you go with that, it implements a very simple digital integration hub type of structure. So in this case, you have, at your API level, you got an API gateway, of course, and you got your function app stability APIs behind it. It comes with a sample sort of application in there, so you can kind of see how it works. For your high performance data store, this one uses PostgreSQL. The integration is happening through event-based, through event grid topics and logic apps. And then of course, once you've implemented that, you can add any number of Azure services on top of that. It's not included in the accelerators, but you can certainly add Synapse if you want analytics or Databricks or Azure Monitor and all the kind of stuff that you would build on top of an Azure solution. So this hasn't. I looked at the repos for this, and it looks like it hasn't been touched in 4 years, and that's probably because of the fact that so many things have evolved now with very advanced structures that they're not looking at this so much. But it's there if you want to use it as a starting point. But here's the but here's the thing: with PaaS, you actually have to build it yourself, right? And that can be a very daunting task. So the other option is to go the SaaS option, and this is what Damien was alluding to before, which is Microsoft Fabric. So this is basically an out-of-the-box, all-in-one platform that you get that does everything for you. So it does basically it does all your end-to-end analytics. It's got a data lakehouse underpinning it. That's the one lake part of it. Uses Microsoft Purview for being able to do your cataloging and your controls, your governance controls on that. And it has all the functionality with data that you would need. You've got Data Factory for ETL. You've got data engineering. Actually, I think the next slide shows everything a little bit better, these components. So Data Factory for ETL, you've got data engineering. So all that kind of processing for collecting, storing, processing, and all of that is in there. Data science for your building machine language models. Data warehousing, again, for that sort of really high performance presentation of structured data. It's also got real-time intelligence, and that is so powerful. There could be a whole session on that. When I was at Integrate in London, there was a guy who did a great demo of that working. I wish I could do it for you. So that's woven into the whole solution, which is just amazing, the stuff that you can do from that. With Power BI also to present it, so you can get your kind of reports and dashboards built in Power BI. It supports a variety of different databases, so you can replicate that data and mirror it and have it presented through your one lake, and that one lake is the data lake, or really a data lake house for storing everything. And it's worth having a look at that one lake. One lake is organized in workspaces, so you can have a developer or a business unit workspace in there that everything is brought into there, but it can be accessible across the whole platform for everything on that. And it also has a really nifty functionality called shortcuts. And what the shortcuts do is it allows you to have a view into data that lives elsewhere without actually having to move that data. So not only data that resides in Azure or maybe on-prem or maybe in your other Microsoft applications like Dynamics, but also other clouds. So there's shortcuts into Amazon and in Google if you want to do that. And I imagine you might add more later capabilities. So I think that's basically just data virtualization, probably. But it works really well. It means you don't have to actually worry about shifting and moving that data. You can make it accessible to the platform. Right, that's the shortcuts feature. And then in terms of how the compute, you have all different kinds of models of computing. You can Spark, T-SQL, KQL, which is Kusto query language. That's really good for like streaming stuff. And of course, your analytic services for being able to present it like Power BI. So
There was, as I said, there was no real landing zone for specifically for a digital integration hub, but there was an architecture, a pattern that they use for Microsoft Fabric. And if I just overlay that paint highlights the bit in this sample sort of design, that is actually Microsoft Fabric, those services in there. And this is just basically what it's designed to do is to collect and process telemetry from vehicles, from testing vehicles. And you can see what happens is that I really feel you guys are left out over there. Sorry. Basically, it's taking the live telemetry data and it's using event grid to collect that and deliver it into two paths. One is that it goes into function apps where it does some decoding of that and then pumps it into your real-time intelligence, which is made up of a couple of different services that include event stream and event house to be able to process that information. And it also pumps the data into Data Factory as well, where you can have those sort of ETL pipelines as well, feeding into the same real-time intelligence, but maybe different aspects of it. And then with event stream and event house, you can basically populate things like your Azure notebooks or your KQL query set so that you can do your sort of AI, processing and analysis on that, or you can visualize it in dashboards or in Power BI reports, or you can feed that data into other tools, something like Grafana or Power Automate. So Data Activator is a service that basically allows you to raise notifications and alarms for certain conditions. So for example, if the data it becomes lower quality or something, you can raise an alarm through Power Automate in that. And I think you mentioned in your roundup about Power Automate and data Fabric.
Databricks.
Oh, it's Databricks. Sorry,
yeah.
Databricks.
But Fabric and Databricks can work together.
Yeah, for sure.
Data Activator is left on the Fabric slide as well. It wasn't on that.
Yeah, it's actually built in. I think when I gave this presentation in London, one of the Microsoft guys said that this actually was a little bit out of date now, so they haven't updated the diagram. But I think Data Activator is bundled into real-time intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it functions as a streaming on your data set and alerts you to changes.
Mm-hmm. So, if we go back to our Azure diagram, and by the way, I should mention Fabric. It's a SaaS product. It's kind of like Office 365, right? Or Dynamics. You actually don't even need an Azure subscription for Fabric, right? It lives on it's like its own product, right? But if you looked at the Azure, the PaaS solution, and you wanted to know what parts of that would be covered by Fabric,
I think just on that one, Dan, I think if you go in the preview, yes, you're right. But if you actually want to use it, you do need a subscription because Fabric is an Azure resource. So you need
Sits
to.
on your resource groups and
Yeah.
tie into your
does
data
it?
lake.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Power BI Premium was its own thing.
Yeah.
You get that by itself, deploy capacity. To deploy a Fabric capacity, it deploys as a resource under Azure resource groups.
So you need an Azure subscription.
Yes.
And if you want a reserved instance,
like-
it goes out on it as well.
If you do the trial, maybe not. But if you actually really want to use it, yes, you do.
Oh, okay.
And then you link that through with all your VNets are deployed through as resources, or your
Yeah.
private networking is deployed through Key Vault is
Yeah.
under there as well. So it's all you can have your Fabric capacities linked to Key Vaults, linked to private networks
Yeah.
all through.
Okay, so I was taking that from out-of-date documentation. Okay, thank you. If you wanted to overlay Fabric on this diagram, it would cover pretty much all of that.
Just to extend that a little bit, up in the microservice layer, you can use the Fabric GraphQL. So I've done that for a client and had APM call Fabric GraphQL. Because at the moment that Fabric diagram, so Fabric's, when it was initially marketed, it was kind of like an endpoint. It's like data goes to die in Fabric and you can't really use it in your organization. But subsequently, the GraphQL endpoints and a lot of those other integration points have now allowed you to plug API gateway into Fabric, and you now
So
get.
you don't need a microservice then. Like
Wow.
you
No, you don't need a microservice. No, well, essentially, you can have microservices in parallel that are orchestrated through APIM, but you can then go from APIM directly into the Fabric GraphQL endpoints and make those data retrieve calls directly into APIM.
okay.
So, and that once you could do that, now that product is really compelling. The initial marketing was like Fabric is Power BI, so you're just reporting on your data.
Right.
But that's not really useful. So once you were able to get data in and get data out, well, now it's an integration platform. It's not a reporting platform.
Okay. Fair enough.
And more options. So in that top one there, you absolutely would use your microservices or your more complicated stuff, because the GraphQL endpoint in Fabric has the ability to put some business rules in there, but you probably don't want to. It's not the best.
Okay. Again, it's going to depend on your situation and your use
Depends on the
case.
situation. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
But to plug it into that, you need to get the data out of Fabric,
Yes.
and that's a catch.
Okay. So what really comes down to is making a choice. Do you go with PaaS or do you go with SaaS? And obviously they each have their advantages. With PaaS, you get the specific products that you need or want. You can choose the best of breed and you can assemble it the way you want, and you have full control over how it ties together. Whereas with SaaS, you're kind of getting it out of the box the way it is and kind of using it. It might supply more than you need, but on the other hand, PaaS is complicated to build. With PaaS, you don't have to worry about that. It's already neatly packaged for you and just works, right? So that's always a decision that you kind of have to make. Okay, so getting close to the end here, I thought I would just wrap up with a couple of examples of where we've done something at Deloitte that involved the digital integration hub type of architecture. So the first use case I can actually reveal the client because Microsoft actually published this themselves. So we actually assisted Microsoft in delivering a solution for the University, for New South Wales Health Pathology, and their problem was that they needed a more sophisticated integration platform. They had a lot of backend systems that still use the old HL7 protocol, which is a real headache. Anybody here work with HL7? You're all lucky. Whereas most of the consumers want the more modern FHIR interface, FHIR. So they needed integration to solve. And if you think about pathology, I mean, it ties into a lot. Your hospitals, your diagnostics, everything. So they wanted to basically solve that. Now, when I could have given you a QR code here. Actually, I had one to the article that you could see, but apparently in the last several months, Microsoft took it down, so I couldn't find it anywhere. But when they did publish the article, they had this diagram in there to that was Microsoft's view of showing how they used all the different Azure services for it. So they were using Cosmos DB in their data platform, and for analytics, they were using Synapse. And of course, on the side, everything is listed on the left side to kind of enable all the integration and other aspects. But instead, I'll show you our diagram of what we built. And what I kind of like about this is that one, it looks a little bit more like Gartner's image. You can see that you got your systems of record on the bottom, you got your consumers on the top of the APIs. And the way we organized it is we did a domain-driven design for all the things. So we stored the data in those particular domains and canonical entities, and they were very advanced in pulling out an API-driven architecture, which is what they wanted, and that really helped them. It was one of the big benefits about it because not only were they now able to integrate properly and expose backend systems with legacy protocols to more modern FHIR protocols, but also because they had that API-driven design, it enabled them to develop new applications and functionalities very quickly. And a perfect example of that was within 2 weeks, they managed to roll out a COVID SMS notification system. And there is an article for that. So that QR code will take you to Microsoft's article that talks about it. And one of the things they shout out is that they were able to do it because they had done an API driven design for it and the work that we assisted them with. So that was a really good use case. The other one, I can't reveal the client name to you, but it's a major energy provider. And they basically wanted to modernize their platform and they're basically for their full integration and interoperability, and also get more advanced analytics from the data. So with them, we basically implemented a digital services platform for them, and we built on Microsoft iPaaS services and Databricks. And we basically gave them an analytics workbench so that they had that they could do more advanced analysis, and they had data governance using Unity Catalog. So this is kind of what it looks like. Blow that up a bit so you can see it more. So you see you're on the bottom, you have your Oracle and Salesforce and SAP systems for data origin, and that's using ETL with Azure Data Factory to feed into a landing zone, which includes all of those folders there. And I'll go in more detail about that in a minute. But your integration platform was basically underpinned by Service Bus with basically web apps, logic apps, and functions, serving all of that and tying everything together. Now, if we look a little bit closer at the landing zone, the way it worked is you had your ETL that was feeding the data into that landing zone, and then with Databricks we had that medallion design that we talked about, like medallion architecture, where you had your bronze, silver, and gold layers in there. So each one processed the data a little bit more. And then we could make that accessible through dashboards, either for Power BI or Databricks dashboard, or feed it into any custom web app. The client, in this case, they chose to go with Power BI, but we could have supported any one of those. Right. Okay. So in summary, wrapping up here. So a digital integration hub, its primary driver was about performance, and that's what it does. It basically makes your APIs respond a lot better without overly taxing your backend systems. And it also gives you an opportunity to do all that advanced analytics and AI capabilities that we need so much these days. Again, while protecting your backend systems, because your high performance data store basically feeds into all of that. And if you want to build one of these, you've got multiple options. You can kind of go with the PaaS approach, where you can choose any number of the Azure services and build a platform, custom design the way you want it, or you could use the SaaS option and use Fabric, which basically gives you everything right out of the box. So I've got a bunch of references here, and I will share these slides. And I always try to, when I can, to shout out this integration down under. So we got tired, all our Australian MVPs, about having to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to attend all the PGI sessions and stuff. So what we've done is we've assembled this where we do a webinar in an APAC friendly time zone, usually Thursday evenings at 5 o'clock or at 7 o'clock, once a month. And we get some great people in there. So there's 4 MVPs and a product group. Team member Gartner, he's a principal program manager on the Logic Apps team. So we do that once a month, and if you go to that QR code, we record every session, and we've got quite a library now of videos. It's really interesting presentations. So if you like integration, definitely recommend that you check that out. And I've got some stickers too. I've got a few of those to give away if you like. And that's pretty much it. So anybody has questions? Happy to. Thank you again so much for your patience tonight. The things being a bit out of whack schedule wise, but anyway, appreciate everybody sticking around. So next month, you'll keep an eye on the calendar because it does coincide. I think I might have already checked that, but and also who the speaker is going to be. Right, but we still have to find one.
Any volunteers?
Anybody want to do a topic? Doesn't have to be huge. Doesn't even have to PowerPoint. But yeah, just let me know. Fine. So just a bit of housekeeping. When you leave, if you brought in any bottles or glasses or anything, it would help Bernie and myself. If you just take them outside, that'd be really good. Have a safe trip. Thank you.
How is Chris Talk Bill going these days?
Yeah, he's going well. Yeah, he did fly home a few weeks ago, so he was in London as well.
Oh, is it?
Mhm.
Big bad. Big bedroom still there.
Yep,